Like I said earlier, we see and we know, I know a lot of people, I've met people that are very, very intelligent. And not all of them, but most of them, when they are intelligent, they look down on you and they talk down to you. They think that they're smarter than you, they're better than you because they're very, very intelligent. But like I said, there's a lot of people that are very, very intelligent and very, very wise, and they do dumb, dumb things. Stupid. Leary. You guys know who Timothy Leary is, right? Timothy Leary? You guys ever heard of LSD? That hallucinogenic drug? He came up with it. He invented it. And he kind of like marketed it in the 60s. He was a very intelligent guy. He knew how to, he was intelligent, very, very smart. And he invented this chemical compound called, and he ended up calling it whatever it is, LSD. But look at what he did with it. He says that he wanted to open his mind up and, experience all these new things and all that. But look at what happened to a lot of people. A lot of people died. A lot of people, through that drug, became addicted to other drugs and substances and ruined their lives. He could have used all that knowledge that he had. He could have used it for something good, and he didn't. It was something very stupid. The world would have been fine without LSD. The 60s would have been fine without LSD. It wouldn't have been the same, but they would have been fine. You know what I mean? The difference between being smart and having wisdom. It's like, for example, I don't know, like in the desert where I'm from, there's a lot of plants that are not good to touch or not good to eat or to drink or whatever, right? Like, for example, like I know all of you guys know what cactus is, right? And you look at cactus, and especially like the ones that they sell at the store, the little real pretty ones, right? That that are like really nice and cute and little, 2 or 3 different ones with little flower coming out of it and whatnot, and they look really cool and everything. And when you go and you buy it at the store, you go and you grab it from the pot, right, from the base, and then you take it to the thing. Why don't you just grab it from the top right there and just grab it like that, and just it's easier, and just grab it from the top. Why? Because you're going to get all those little needles inside your hand, right? Knowledge tells you that it's not smart to grab it from there, right? Because you're going to get poked. And wisdom is what tells you, I better not do that. I better not grab it from there. That's knowledge and wisdom in a practical sense. Okay, it's like, I don't know, a dog when he's, if a dog is really friendly, it's cool to go over there and pet him, right? But if you go up to a dog and the dog starts, it wouldn't be the smartest thing to go up there and put your hand right in front of his mouth, right? Because he's probably going to bite you, right? So knowledge is knowing that dog looks a little bit angry. Wisdom is don't touch him. So that's some practical examples of what it is to be knowledgeable and to be wise. So here we see both Peter and James saying something to the effect of, be careful in the way that you act, be careful in the way that you speak, and then also put away all the stuff that is bad, all the stuff that can ruin the wisdom that you receive from God, and receive His word with meekness. Be humble. God will give us this wisdom about certain things, but then if we act in a not so nice way, it takes away all that wisdom. It makes people not even want to hear you because of the way that you speak to them or the way that you act, because you have all this wisdom. So it's always good to be humble. It's necessary for a Christian especially to be humble, because otherwise you're never going to get people to know and even want to know who Jesus Christ is, because they're going to look at you and say, well, this guy, he's real wise and everything, but he's kind of a jerk. Who's going to want to hang out with you or want to even ask you anything if you're going to be, Look at what it says in it's 14. But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast and be and make the you're buying God's blessing, kind of. Well, if you give, then that's can bless me. That's not necessarily what happens. You know, let's look at the lives of the apostles, man. These people were blessed of God. You know, these people had, they were wise. They had knowledge of the scriptures. You know, they lived to please God. That's what their life was all about. And all of them were murdered. You know, they had a rough life. These guys were not living in the lap of luxury. These guys were suffering. A lot of them were hungry. You know, Peter says that he was, beaten to death a couple times, left for dead at least once. You know, many times was given 39, a scourging of 39 lashes. You know, that's not fun. I don't know if you guys ever been, I know when I was little, every once in a while I would get hit with a belt. That wasn't fun. You know, and they were hitting me. Usually my dad would hit me in the butt. You know, there was a lot of cushion there, right? When they're hitting you on your back, there's not a lot of cushion there. You know, and they're hitting you with a rod that's flexible. That doesn't feel good. You know? So it's not like they were living like this life of, I have this beautiful compound and, I have my personal. Just because you give your life to God, you're going to have a happy life. In the United States, we're very. It's necessary for us to be the way that we are. You know, he wants to keep us humble. He wants us to be meek. It says, if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition, that's horrible to have that in your heart. You know, to be jealous of people because of what they have or how they are. You know, if you have ambition, it's good to have ambition. It's good to be ambitious. It's good to really want good things for you and for your family. But when it's selfish ambition, it's not good. You know, as Christians, we should always be thinking about the person that's next to us, our brother and our sister. You know, and really think about them and really want to do good for the benefit of them and of our church. Not just for us. You know, not just for us as individuals. Always think of the person next to you better than how you are. You know, think of yourselves as less than the person that's next to you so that you can act accordingly. Because otherwise, we become these people that are very wise and knowledgeable in the scripture. And when people ask us about who Jesus Christ is, we give them this smart aleck answer. And that's never good. Look at what he says right here in verse 15. It says, this is not the wisdom that comes from above. Spiritual and demonic. What is wisdom? Really, what is it? You know? It's using your knowledge in the right way. That's basically what wisdom is the knowledge that we've accumulated over the years or whatever. You know, a lot of you grew up in church, some of you didn't, some of us didn't, you know, but the knowledge that we accumulate, use it in the right way. That's basically what wisdom is. It's almost like, kind of like godliness. It's, you know, you manifest it in your behavior. That's the only way that we know that somebody is wise. Because somebody, you know, if we just hear somebody say something wise, it doesn't really mean anything. It's until we see that wisdom in action is that it means something, right? Because that's really when anything is really valuable. Once we see it in action. Because it would be unwise to just go and, oh, that car looks nice, and then you take it home, or you pay the money, and you try to start it, and there's no engine in it. Well, you didn't open the hood. Well, that's your problem. You know, so it's manifested in behavior. You have to know that these things that this person is. The knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. Okay? If we really are wise, it's because we fear the Lord. If we use that wisdom otherwise, it's not really wisdom. It's just smarts. It could be street smarts, it could be anything, but it's not really wisdom. So check this out, in these verses in 14, 15, and 16. It talks about an earthly wisdom, a natural wisdom, and a demonic wisdom. Earthly wisdom. That's not from God. If it's an earthly wisdom, it's not from God. People get where I work, you know, people, if you get a good table and, you know, these people, you know, write a good thing, oh, they say something good about you, well, it's probably because they're always here. You know, that's blah, blah, blah. It's never because the server was good or never because you were good. It's because other people were good and they made you look good. You know? And so this wisdom is that type of wisdom, and that's what people do. You know, they... Look at what it says in 1 Corinthians 1:20. Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? You know, we should never use that wisdom of dog eat dog, of trying to get ahead at other people's expense. Never use it to make a decision that's supposed to be wise, because it's not going to be wise. It's just going to be worldly. Look at the earthly wisdom. In the Greek, it's sukikos, which is where the word psychic and psychology and psyche come from. So this is where you use the wisdom that makes sense. For example, if there's an issue, you blame it on somebody else. Well, this is what your psyche to. Well, it wasn't really your fault. It was the other person's fault. So you can blame it on them. So you don't have any responsibility in the issue.